So the first thing that since I'm recording now, I'm just going to quickly go over what we already talked about. Dockers are over here on the right. Memorial Designer at the top will get you to the Memorial Designer Dockers if they're not there. If they get accidentally closed, Corel Draw Dockers you can get to from here with that plus sign. Or if you go to Window Dockers, they're going to be listed there as well. The Memorial Designer ones are here at the bottom. Over here on the left is the toolbox. Those are going to be tools for selecting and moving and zooming and drawing and all sorts of stuff over there. To the left of that is your color palette. And then the colors matter because that's really how granite fills get applied. So we start with grayscales first, and then we will apply granite fills to that. There's a couple of reasons we decided to do it that way. One is because back in 1989, color was hard. Like it took a long time to fill a screen with color. So doing things in grayscale was a lot easier to start with. The other is that it's just faster in general if you're working in grayscales rather than in full color to begin with. And because it's as easy once you get everything designed up as just a single click to fill everything in, it's really not that bad, color-wise, to apply those fills. So when it comes to your granite colors, your grayscales really matter. And you can either get to them over here on the left, so that's what the color palette is for. And the ones that actually map to granite colors are 100% white. Again, is going to map to this, which is called stain 2. It's our secondary stain. We usually use that for if you're doing stuff right in the polish. That's usually what we reserve that for. So if I had some text up here, and I wanted this text to be a different color than this text, I'm going to fill it in with white. Okay? Even if it's not going to be white, we still fill it in with white in the grayscale version because that's going to end up mapping to, for instance, gold leaf when we do our fill. So when I fill this in with a granite color, it's going to say, oh, that was white, so I'm going to make it gold. Okay? It's kind of hard to wrap your brain around it, I think, at first, but once you realize that that's what it's doing, then it starts making a lot more sense. So the same thing with pure black. All of this, if we look at it, is, if you look down here, this is your fill color, okay? And this is your outline color. I prefer not to have outlines on most stuff. I just want them to be filled in, and so that's why you can see a black fill color. And since it's pure black, it's going to map to this. So if I don't want black for my fill, if I want maybe gray instead, then when I do my fills, it's going to take everything that was black and turn it gray. Okay? But when we go back to the grayscales, it's going to go back to the black and white for us.
Cameron, I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yep.
The little rectangle up in the top that has the white to the black.
Yes. So
Most of us dinosaurs tend to gravitate to that.
Exactly, and that's the reason for that is because here, this color chooser, what I did was I took those same colors that we use for granite colors, but I gave them names so that you can see what they are, and then I also gave them keyboard shortcuts so that if you want to apply them quickly, you can use a keyboard shortcut. So with any of the tools that have keyboard shortcuts, you'll notice to the right of the tool itself is the keyboard shortcut. So if I hover over this, for instance, in parentheses is the letter F. That means that that's the keyboard shortcut for that tool.
Nice.
So with these ones, the keyboard shortcuts are actually just numbers. So 3 will apply white, 4 will do 10% gray, which ends up becoming frost.
That's control 3 or control 4?
Just 3 and 4. No control, no shift, no alt. Okay? Just the numbers themselves. And so if this is our panel that's currently frost, which is 10%, it's marked as frost. If I want it to go to polish, I just switch over to polish, and then it'll become the 30% gray, which will end up becoming polish. When I do my granite fills, it will fill it in with polish instead of frost. Okay? So if I want it to be frost again, I could just hit 4 on the keyboard and it'll go right back to that 10% gray, which ends up becoming frost.
What do you call that row of tools there, or whatever?
So this is just the Memorial Designer toolbar.
Okay,
Yep. Yep. If you right click anywhere on a blank section of the workspace, you'll see down here at the bottom is a Memorial Designer, and then with a checkbox. If I uncheck that, that one's going to go away. Okay, so that is the Memorial Designer toolbar right there. This top one at the very top is called the menu bar. So if I uncheck that, you'll see it disappears. Corel Draw can do a whole bunch of stuff. And so there's a lot of tools up here in the menus. If you ever wanted to do anything, there's a lot of stuff in here. We're not going to cover that in this training. We're just going to cover basics. Okay? But there's a lot that it can do, and a lot of it's nested inside of these different menus. The next one down, this top toolbar is called the standard, just standard right here. If I make that one disappear, you'll see. So the standard toolbar, open, close, start, new, print, import, export, those kind of different things are on that standard toolbar. Along with the standard toolbar on my workspace, I don't put this on everybody's because some people don't have the screen real estate or some people just don't even care. But I do have this toolbar up here, which is called Project Timer. And that's what that does is when I start doing anything, it will actually time how long I've been working on something. So that if I'm doing drawings for somebody else, I can bill them and gauge if I'm being really slow or not. So that's what Project Timer is for. And I put it up here on that same tool. It's a different toolbar, but it's right after that one, the standard one. So that's why that's up there. This one here is important. This one's called the property bar. And the property bar changes based on what you have selected, based on what your tool is, that sort of stuff. So right now I have the pick tool, which is the very top one here over in the toolbox. And the pick tool is used for selecting things, moving them around, resizing them, that sort of stuff. And so with the pick tool, you'll notice here is just the standard property bar, which gives me the size of my page. These are the dimensions of the page. This is my orientation of the page. These are my units, if I'm going inches versus something crazy. This is what's called nudge. Nudge is how much things move based on when you click up and down arrows. So if I hit up and down on my keyboard, it's going to just move up and down by that amount, which is my nudge amount. Okay. This is a duplicate distance. So if you duplicate something with a keyboard shortcut or go up to Object and duplicate it, it's going to go. So if I just hit Control D, it's going to make another one to the right and above 1/4 of an inch in either direction. The workspace, this white area here, okay, this workspace area, desktop, I tend to call it a bunch of different things. I think literally it's called the desktop window. I don't know. But either way, this is basically an XY coordinate. So you've got an X going left to right, and you've got a Y going top to bottom. Okay? And so that's why this has, there's a little X right next to it. That's your X distance, which is to the right, or to the left if it's a negative. And this is going to be Y. Y positive would be up, Y negative would be down. So that's why it went up and to the right 1/4 of an inch. Okay? There are rulers here that show you kind of how big things are. So if I look, there's a 0 right here, and then there's a 24 right here. So you can see this is 24 inches from there to there. But if I click on it, you'll also see that it gives me the size right here. So if you notice, when I clicked on that, that property bar changed. The whole idea of the property bar is to give you quick access to tools that you need when you need them. Okay? And so I use the property bar a lot because it's a lot of times the fastest way to get to something because it's specific to whatever I'm working on at the time. Okay? If I were to hold Shift, for instance, and click on something else, some of these tools are changing because I've got multiple things selected. Okay? Or if I select text, it's going to change as well because I've got text selected. So depending on what you've got selected, what tool you're using over here, they're going to give you different options up here on the property bar. Okay? This button here, the welcome screen, I don't particularly use the welcome screen. If you want to, you can always use it if you want. It shows a getting started tab, which shows the different things that you've opened up in the past. It's also got a new button there you can open up here. When I'm designing, I almost always start from something blank, and so I just have it default to a blank document, but you can certainly have it default to welcome screen if you want. You can also get to a bunch of other stuff, and I find that Corel likes to put a lot of ads in here, so I don't want to see that anyway. It has nothing to do with what I am doing, so I just start with a blank document. These tabs along the top are your documents that are currently open, and the welcome screen, again, if I close it, it's just going to go back to that little house icon. So now I've got an untitled document because I had started with a blank one, and then I've got this one, which is the one that we were looking at. And you just switch between them here with the tabs, or you can do the same thing under window. They're listed at the bottom here, so untitled one, and then those are your open documents, okay? To close a document that's currently open, you can either go to File and close it, or you can click on the little X that pops up if you hover over it. And that way you can close your document out. If it's got a little asterisk right there, that means your document is not saved since you made a change. Okay, so if you want to save whatever you're working on, you should usually, it's a best practice to save it first before you close it out. So the save button is going to, if we started with a blank document right here, okay, and we clicked that save button, it's going to pop up a window asking us for a name because it doesn't have a name. And then you can go and decide where you want to save it. This one here already has a name because it's a file that I was already working on. So when I click save, it's just going to save it as that same file. It's not going to pop anything up. Unless you want it to, then you'd go to File and say Save As instead, and that will let you save it as a different document than the one you're currently working on. Okay? So those are your tabs for your open documents. If you want to start a new one as well, you can just click this plus sign, and that'll start a new document there. Usually when it comes to CorelDRAW, there's going to be 3 or 4 or maybe even 100 different ways to do the same thing, which is good and bad. It's good in that it gives you a lot of flexibility and customization. It's the downside is that if you're a beginner and you've never used it before, it's like sensory overload, and you get analysis paralysis because you're like, I don't know what to click on, you know. So I will show you the way that I do it because it's the fastest way that I've found to do it. Not to say that's the only way though. So my way's not the only way, but it's probably the best way. No, that's very egotistical, but
We think like him.
yeah. Basically, I've spent the last 42, 22. Yeah, I've spent the last 20 plus years spending a lot of time figuring out how to do something fastest. So I'll take an hour to figure out how to do something in a second.
2 hours a day, right?
Only 2 hours a day, but it's been 20 plus years, so we're good. Yep. Okay, so that's those there. As far as the rulers go, if you click on a ruler and drag down, it's going to give you what's called a guideline. Okay. If you click on this one and drag over, it's going to give you a guideline. Those guidelines can be helpful when you're trying to line things up, that sort of stuff. I don't use guidelines a whole lot, but they do come in handy when you need them. Down here at the bottom, you'll notice 1 of 1, and that's because there's only one page in this document. If I were to add another page, all of a sudden now it says 2 of 2. And there's tabs down here now, because every document that you have can have multiple pages in it. I like to have multiple page documents because I do different things with the different pages. Okay, so you need to pay attention to down here to see if you're on the right page or if you're looking at a different page there. Over here, these are just scroll bars. So if you have a lot of stuff, you'll see right here, this is 1,268 inches wide. I zoom out really far, and I zoom with my mouse button. Or my mouse wheel. I don't know if you guys like the mouse wheel zoom. I find that to be fastest when I'm zooming in and out. You just kind of zoom in and out, up and down with your mouse wheel. If it's going too fast or too slow, you can hold shift and it'll kind of step it down as far as how many steps it takes. I don't really mess with that, but zooming with the mouse wheel is what I do most often, or I'll use keyboard shortcuts to zoom, or there is a zoom tool over here too. But you'll notice that now that I'm zoomed in, this scroll bar, I'll just fill this in so we can see. Left clicking any color is going to give you your fill color. So if you look down here, this is our fill, okay? If you look over here, this is our outline. So the reason that it has a black outline is because when I first created it, that's all it was just a black outline. So down here, you're a black outline with no fill. As soon as I fill it in, then you'll notice that it's got a fill down here. So that's your fill color, that's your outline color, okay? And when I'm zoomed in really far, now I can scroll, and that'll let me scroll around my objects up and down, back and forth. If you want to use the mouse to scroll, you can. Okay, so if you hold Control, it lets you scroll left and right. I don't really do that a lot. In CorelDRAW, the Shift, Control, and Alt modifiers on your keyboard do a lot of stuff, and so they're very important in learning how to use those different keystrokes.
Are you going to teach us those?
I will teach you as many as I can.
Shift, Control, and
Yeah, so Shift, Control, and Alt, and depending on the tool that you have selected, are going to do different things. Okay, so when it comes to zooming, Shift is going to change how quickly you zoom in and out. Control changes your left and it goes to panning, basically panning left and right.
say that again.
Control switches your zoom. So when you're on your mouse wheel, okay, if you hold Control, it's going to switch it to a pan, which is left and right, being able to move left and right. Shift is how quickly you're going to zoom in and out.
Just for that one particular movement, right? That's
Just for this movement,
right.
moving your mouse up and down,
Is there like
your mouse wheel.
Is there something that defines what Control does versus what Shift does in a global way?
Not in a global way, no, because every tool has specific things that Control, Shift, or Alt will do, or a combination of Control and Shift, Control and Alt. So that's why it's with the printed keyboard shortcuts here. Those are the ones that I use most often. There's about 100 of them that I use most often, which is a lot to memorize. But once you do it, it becomes part of your muscle memory, and it's just second nature.
If you're moving stuff around or zooming around, I seem to have gotten off. So can you just jump back to?
Yeah. So if you're zoomed way out or everything's off, the easiest way to get to where you see everything is called a zoom to all. And on a keyboard, it's F4 on the keyboard. That zooms to everything on your page. Okay. If you are on a laptop that the function keys are the same as other keys, a lot of times you're going to have to either function lock or hold function and F4. So it depends on the keyboard you're on. So like on this keyboard here, there's a little function button down here because these function keys are the same as changing brightness and that sort of stuff. And so by illuminating a function key, they turn into the F keys. By not illuminating it, it's going to be those other secondary options. So you'd have to hold that button and then hit F4 for it to move. Okay. Every keyboard is going to be slightly different. But that's what you're looking for is the function.
Is there a tool to go back to center somewhere?
Yeah, so if you don't want to do a keyboard shortcut, over here on the left is your zoom tool. Okay. And again, if you hold Z on the keyboard, it's going to switch to the zoom tool. And then the property bar switched over to the zoom tools. And so this one here, zoom to all objects, is the one that we're clicking on, F4. Okay? So if you're zoomed way out and you hit that button right there, it's going to zoom to everything that's on your page. Make sense? when it comes to how much data you can have on a single page, I want to say the limit's like 1,800 inches by 1,800 inches. Most of the time you're not going to go over that with monuments. Sometimes it happens, but most of the time that's not an issue. If it ever is an issue, let me know and I'll walk you through how to do either scaling or there's different things you can do. But for most people, 1,800 inches is plenty. Although I know that Brooksy does sell some big stuff, so all in black with modified Roman is the font.
No lip though.
No lip though, right? Okay. So that's what these are, scroll bars. Right to the bottom right-hand corner of that is the navigation tool. If you have a whole bunch of stuff in your document like this, and you're zoomed in, you can click on that little navigator and kind of pan around it. I hardly ever use that myself just because I'm going to hit F4 and then zoom into what I want. Okay. And the way that the zoom tool works with your mouse, at least the way that I have it set up by default, is wherever your mouse is pointed, that's where it's going to focus the zoom. So if I wanted to zoom into this particular object, I'll move my mouse there first and then start zooming and it'll center on where my mouse click is. Okay. If I wanted to zoom into this one, I'd do the same thing. Just kind of point my mouse here first and then zoom in and it's going to get me there. Okay. So almost always F4 to zoom out to everything and then just zooming in and out with my mouse is kind of what I do. If you do have the zoom tool, you can left click to zoom in, you can right click to zoom out. Okay, and the other thing that I use the zoom tool for a lot is zooming to a specific area. If I wanted to zoom to just these pieces, you click and drag, and anything in that window, that's where you're going to zoom to. Okay, so if I really want to get in here, I can click and drag like that, and it'll get me in there.
Nice.
F2 on the keyboard. So let's say I was designing like this, and I'm like, yeah, I really want to mess with here, right? But I'm in messing with stuff, and I'm like, I want to zoom into right there. If you hit F2 on the keyboard, it's a quick one-shot zoom tool, so it'll move to the zoom tool, let you swipe like that, and then it goes right back to the tool that you were using before. So that is, I think the name of it's just one-shot zoom, but there is zoom to page width, zoom to page height, but with monuments, almost always we're designing bigger than what the page itself is. And so I hide the page border because even though it's by default when you start up a CorelDRAW graphic, it's 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper because it's expecting you to print something. And so if I click this rectangle right here, which is the page border, it's going to show me that page border. If I uncheck it, it's going to hide that page border. By default, I have it hidden because I don't want to work on a page when I do monuments. I find it distracting. I don't even like the look. Like, I don't like being stuck in a box, I guess. If you like being stuck in a box, do it. Whatever. That's fine. But I don't like, when I'm showing my customer what a stone looks like, I don't want a box around it, you know? And so I hide that almost all the time. And now my box is 1,800 by 1,800. So I got plenty of space there to build stuff. But the zoom tools, if I'm zooming into a page width or height, it's based off of that hidden page there. So that's why it's going to zoom into either my width or my height of my page. Okay, make sense? Down here at the bottom, this is called the status bar. And again, that's going to change depending on what you have selected or what's going on. And a lot of times it's meant to give you some hints. Okay, so if I had something drawn, or I've got the rectangle tool selected down here, it'll tell me double click tool creates a page frame. So if I double click this, let's just say I've got these two things selected. Oh, sorry, here's my page, right? This is my page. If I had it hidden and I double clicked this, it's going to build a rectangle the size of my page. Okay, and the reason it did that is because it tells me down here, double click the tool creates a page frame. Control plus drag constrains to a square. So if I'm trying to draw like this and I hold control, it's going to keep it so that it's a square instead of a rectangle. Okay. It also says shift plus drag draws from center. So if I was right here and I held shift while I was clicking, it's going to draw from the center instead of the upper left, lower left kind of thing. So a lot of times, Julia, down here, it's going to give you hints. Tammy, you asked too, if there's like a global thing that Control Shift or Alt does. There's not. And so a lot of times it's going to tell you down here some things you can do. Okay. There are other options that the status bar will do, but I find it more advantageous to do tool hints down there instead of coordinates or whatever. The other thing down here on the status bar is this right here tells you what you have selected. So I've got this selected. It's called a rectangle, and it's on layer 1. Okay. If I had an ellipse, it would say I've got an ellipse on layer 1. If I had a bunch of things selected, it would say 5 objects selected on layer 1. And so I pay attention down here too to know what I have selected or how many things I have selected, because it gives you a visual indicator of what you've got down there. This bottom right-hand corner button, proof colors on, you don't use that for monuments, that's for printing, so you'll never really touch that. If you do, it'll explode, so don't touch it. It's like a big bad
Sure, that's the one I'm gonna
Yeah,
hit.
exactly. No, it won't probably hurt anything, but
Say don't touch, I touch.
okay. The other thing in the workspace is in the upper left-hand corner. This is the name of the program. Okay, Corel Draw, and then the version 2020, and then 64-bit or 32-bit. Most people nowadays are going to be 64-bit. And then this is also your name of the document that you're currently working on. It's untitled one because I haven't saved it yet. If I move over to this one, now it's going to show me the path for where that document is saved. Okay. If we move way over to the right, there's a little silhouette right there. That shows you who you're signed in as. Corel does require you to sign in order to use their program. It doesn't do a whole lot of tracking, but there are certain things that are online only and that sort of stuff that you have to be logged in for it to utilize. So that tells you who you're signed in as.
So on our name tag, we should all put Cameron?
No. Not gonna happen. The way that licensing works with Corel Draw and Memorial Designer is the same. You are basically one user. You are one user, okay? But you can use the program on multiple machines. So I've got it here on my laptop. I've also got it on my desktop at home, and I've got it on a different, my wife's computer or whatever. I can have it on up to 3 machines for one user, and that's perfectly legal. Nothing wrong with that. If I had it on my laptop here and my wife was at home working on my license, then that's breaking licensing rules. If you have more than one person using it at the same time, you need to have multiple licenses. But that's really what that is who you're logged in as. Okay.
Is it single user license or site license?
They do offer both. Most of what we do is just single user though, because the reason is the site licenses usually you can only install licenses on one computer instead of multiples per seat. And I find that most monument shops are going to have a design computer, a cutting computer, design room computer, something in the truck, whatever. They're going to have multiple computers. And so it makes more sense to do their 3-computer license to me. So that's why I go that way. And then also licensing wise, just because, like I said, I started out with a few people and now I've grown and now we're up to about 500 users. So if I wanted to, I could buy a whole bunch of licenses, in bulk and save myself some money. But I actually prefer the flexibility of not having to do that and not keeping inventory. So I just buy licenses as needed. And I've got a Corel rep that she'll just send me carts and it works perfectly. So we like it that way. That covers, as far as what's on your page, your workspace, that covers everything there. We talked about Dockers. Yeah, the only other thing is that you can move things around. You can pull things out. So if, for instance, you grabbed this tab and you pulled it out, Now all of a sudden it's kind of open in its own window, okay? So if you ever do that, you just kind of need to realize that that's what happened. And if you want to do it on purpose, that's fine too. Some people like to do that because then there's no distractions. There's no buttons around it. It's just, that's all you're looking at. If you ever need to bring it back, you just drag it back to, you'll see that gray box kind of showing that you're going to place it with the rest of those. So it's going back to where it was.
If you use two screens, you can draw the other screen.
Yep, if you use multiple monitors, you can have one over on the other side. You're in one program, but you got two windows open, so you can do things side by side that way. The dockers themselves also undock. You can grab those and pull those out. So if they become detached, again, it's not a big deal if they do. You just need to realize that's what it's doing. You can dock them to this side if you wanted to. Just pull them over there, and now they're docked over there. You can also have multiple dockers open at the same time. So if I wanted panels and spacing over here, I could do it. I'm just going to dock it over here. Okay. You could dock your dockers to the bottom. I find it kind of distracting to have it down there because now your window for what you're drawing in is really small. So I don't usually dock a whole lot at the bottom there. But if you ever wanted to, that's an option. So dockers can move around. They're also resizable, so I can make it bigger or smaller. Just grabbing the corners like that. If I want to put them all back together, I'm just going to dock them again back to the way that they were. And now it's back to normal. Okay? Any questions on any of that stuff? Workspace stuff. Okay. So, do you feel like you're ready to make your first headstone design?
Take a break for a second.
You can take a break. If you need to take a break, that's fine. No, I'm not going to let you take a break. Does anybody need a break? No? Okay. Okay, so we're going to get started. So we're going to design this stone from scratch. Not really from scratch. And this is also going to show whether or not your stuff is in the right place. So what we're going to do is we're going to start from a template, because that is really the easiest way to start something is if it already exists, right? So, opening a document, you're going to click Open. Up here, File Open does the same thing. Click on Open, and it's going to pop up a dialog for where your files are. Okay? If yours looks different than mine, that's okay. Mine's black. Yours might not be black. Over here on the left, this is more of a Windows dialog. So you might not have things showing up over here under Organize, Layout. I'm showing the navigation pane, so that's why stuff shows up over there. The preview pane, a lot of times I don't actually like preview, so I'm going to uncheck that one. But does anybody not know how to navigate your folder structure? I mean, raise your hand if you don't, and it's okay if you don't, because that's how you learn, right?
It'll be what I don't.
Okay, so
Everybody's is going to be a little different.
right, everybody's is a little different. The look is a little different. But in general, your files are all going to be in a folder somewhere, okay? By default, when we install Memorial Designer, it's going to go to your Documents folder, okay? And so under Documents, there is a Memorial Designer folder, which, if I see I've probably got a lot more stuff on here than some of you do. There's a Memorial Designer folder, okay? Under Memorial Designer, there is a Classic Collection folder. And if at any point you don't see that, just raise your hand and we'll step you into where you need to be. Okay? So we're going to go to Classic Collection.
I don't see that.
Okay, so let me check out your machine really quick. Because yours, I believe, is under Desktop, and then Memorial Designer Shortcuts, and then Memorial Designer. Yes, yours is moved to the desktop, so that's why it's there. And then Classic Collection. I think you've got all the files on your server, so you can pull them from there as well. I like to work locally instead of working on a server because it's faster, especially when you're saving and opening files. It's a lot faster. So I prefer local, but you can do whatever you want. Okay.
So go to Classic Collection.
Classic Collection, yep. And then Layouts. And then you'll see here under layouts that there's I'm going to scoot back. Under classic collection, you're probably going to see designs and layouts. You might see something else too, but designs and layouts, the difference between the two, layouts are full stones that are already laid out. Designs is just individual pieces of clip art. If you look on the tables, there's some of these design books. These ones are design folders. So everything in that designs folder is in this book. Okay. I did no. These are all my my test ones. So I don't have any good ones to sell. But if you want to buy them, we can certainly ship them to you. Okay. So designs is not where we want to go. We're going to layouts because we're starting with a template. Okay. Go to layouts. And then we're going to go to single flats. If you don't see the designs, you might have your view set to something different. You might have your view set to details, for instance, and then you'll only see this. Okay? If you want to see the designs, you switch your view to extra large icons or large icons, and it'll show you an image of what it's going to look like. Okay. Is everybody there? Maybe I should ask, is anybody not there yet? Okay, so we're there. So what we're going to do is we're going to open up 151, which is this one right here, and we're going to say open. And that will open up that file, which is design number 151. For our designs that we sell, we give them just a number because it's easy to open up that way with this tool, which is called Open by Number. Now, the reason I didn't start with Open by Number is I wanted to show you how to open a file. Okay, but if you're looking in a design book that has numbers in it, instead you could just click Open by Number, type 151, and hit Open, and it will go and find it if it exists. Okay, I play with my computer a lot, and so it's not actually pointing to where it needs to. So I'm going to point it to my classic collection. Now if I hit 151 and hit open, it'll go and find it and open it up.
Quick question.
Yeah.
If you do a design for a past customer, you're looking to duplicate the same thing and you've saved it under that family name, can you also pull it up with a family name? Or do you have to do a number?
So open by number, the way that the code works on this is it's going to look for whatever you type. Let's say you did John's and the name's Johnson. It's going to find the first Johns that it can find. So if you have 5 Johnsons, it's going to just find the first one and open that up, which is not necessarily what you're looking for.
Okay, so where should I list?
It's going to find the first one it finds based on the folder structure that it's looking through. Not most recent, no. And so if you're looking for a design that you've already done in the past, the best way to go about it is to use File and Open, okay? And then up here in the top right is a search. So up there, if I come back, and the search works from whatever folder you're in, and then it'll search that folder and any subfolders. So if I want to search all of my, designs that I know I've done, I would click on my orders here, and this is all my orders that I've done, okay? And then I'll come over here and type in John's. It's going to pop up a list, and again, this is Windows 11, so it's going to look a little different in Windows 10, a little different in Windows 7. I'm not too much a fan of what they did in Windows 11 or some of the later versions of Windows 10, that if you click on it, it's going to open it up. Like, I realize what they're doing, but if you click on it, it opens up that file instead of get you to the list. If you want to see the list of the search, you have to click on this little arrow button, and then the arrow will go to the search, and then it'll show everything that's popping up that way. So you'll see now this says John's, Johnson, as long as it's part of that name, it's going to show up there. And then you can just scroll through and go that way. Okay?
Cameron?
Yes.
If I saved my document as a number and I put it into that file, a new one, can I do that?
You can do whatever you want.
I could do that, but then if we update, does it affect those?
Yeah, so let's...
files and then I could possibly lose it?
Yeah, so this, because ours are, number 151, if I save this as 151, you got two options. You're either going to overwrite this template, which means that it's not going to be the same as what it was before, or you can do a save as and save it somewhere else
As long
with...
as I saved it as a number and I saved it in that same file, will the computer open by number?
Yeah, the way that open by number works is it's looking in a specific folder, okay? And I usually have open by number under settings here set to look in the classic collection folder, okay? So open by number is going to look here by default, and it's going to find anything that belongs there. So if you want to open by number, you need to be in that folder or a subfolder of it for it to find it.
So if I save my own file in that folder and then you do an upgrade, is it going to make my stuff that I saved in there disappear?
No, when you update, it's not going to overwrite your stuff unless if you saved it as the exact same number. So if mine was 151 and you saved it as 151, and then we did an update, which reinstalled my 151, then it would overwrite. Then it's fine. Yeah, it's safe. Yeah, exactly. So as long as you change those numbers, change the naming convention, make them unique, then it's going to be your own stuff. Most of the time I suggest for companies to preface their numbers with something. So Darwin Monuments, I would start DM something. You can do your file naming as however you want, but I usually suggest that because it's not going to conflict with anything we do that's just numbers. If you add a letter in there, that's great. I used to do MD and then my numbers, but then I got really lazy and I'm like, I don't want to type MD all the time and I want to use my, keypad. And so.
Would you recommend that for family names as well?
For when I,
If you're going to title it Johnson Keith.
So when I do my file, when I save my files, okay, and we'll show. I'm thinking of, no, I'll just tell you. So what I do is all of the orders that we had an order number in our order tracking system. So I started with that number, and then I would do the family name, comma, first names. That was my file naming convention for orders. You don't have to do it that way. You can do whatever you want. But if I click on open and go to our orders, because now I'm not just a monument shop, we're doing design work for other monument shops. We also have all of our clients here. So we start there. Each client has their own folder.
The financials for Buzzies.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, we'd look into that. So if I've ever done anything for Brooksy, it's in here. Okay, and then again, his isn't stuff that we do a lot of designs. I'll show you one.
You do a lot for me.
Yeah, we'll do Williams. Okay, so in Williams, you'll see that all of our folders are named with the order number first, and then actually we do a dash, last name, comma, first names. And the reason for that is because, then they're searchable by order number, they're searchable by name. As much information as I can put in there, it makes searching later on a lot easier. And you don't really have to worry too much these days about long file names. Back in the beginning, that was an issue, but it's not really an issue much anymore.
If you just use the family name, that would mess with anything that you guys would do for later down the road for updates because you're using
No, we're just using numbers. But if you just use Johnson and you end up with 12 Johnsons, it's like, well, which one is it?
Family name.
Yeah.
First name.
Yeah, and that's why we do it that way.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So what if we don't have 151 on our collection?
Okay, if you don't have it, then we'll install it at lunch.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fix all of it.
Yes.
Then you're gonna do it from scratch.
Yep. Or if you're connected to the internet, okay, and you click open by number and you type in 151 and it doesn't exist, it's going to say, hey, this doesn't exist. Would you like to go to the internet and look for it? Click yes. It'll download it and open it up. And then it'll probably say, you don't have this font.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got 151 open, right? For this particular thing, all I want to do is change text. Okay, that's all we're going to do in this design, is only text. So, when it comes to text, if you have existing text already and you want to change it, you can click on it with your pick tool once, and that's going to put these what are called handles around it, which shows you that it's selected. Down here, it's going to tell you what's selected. Okay. So if I click, and the biggest thing that people get stuck on, usually when selecting something, especially when coming from Gerber or something else that works a little differently, you have to use the very tip of your cursor touching the color, okay, the black area. If I had my cursor in here on the inside and I clicked, it's not going to select the text. It's going to select whatever's behind it, which is the panel. Okay. So when it comes to your pick tool, the upper left-hand point where the actual arrow is pointing, that's the one little pixel that it's looking at for clicking. That needs to be pointing at the color of what you're doing, or the outline if it was an outline. So if I had an outline, I could click right here along the outline and it would select it. If I click inside this, it's not going to do anything. Okay? But if I click right here on the outline, it'll select it. So when it comes to text, you can click once to select it. If you click a double click, you just go click, click, it'll automatically switch to your text tool. Now over here on the left, it's switched over to the text tool if you did a double click correctly. And it will also show you a little up and down cursor there showing where your text tool is currently located. If I click anywhere else in here, it's going to move that cursor to where, wherever I click. Some people like to click and swipe to change, and it's going to select it blue if you're swiping it. I don't like to do that because sometimes I'll accidentally hit this handle. If I'm trying to start at the beginning, if I'm working really fast, I'll hit that handle, and then all of a sudden it's like stretching it. I'm like, oh, undo is your best friend. Control Z is undo. That's going to be your best friend there. Undo is also up here at the top. There's an undo and a redo. So if you ever mess up, just click undo. If undo doesn't fix it, I'm sorry. Most of the stuff you can undo easily with an undo. When it comes to our tools, sometimes our tools, we can't tell it to do a single undo. And so it's going to have a list of a whole bunch of different things that it's doing. So sometimes you're not able to step back to where you started because by default, there's only 150 undo levels. You can go higher than that, but it eats more memory. So 150 is usually pretty good. However, some of the tools we have more than 150 steps behind them. So just letting you know.
Grayed out.
If they are grayed out, it means you can't do it. Okay? And so if it's an undo that's grayed out, you haven't done anything to undo. Okay. If there's like this over here, which is copy, cut, those are grayed out because I have nothing selected.
Gotcha.
If I clicked on it, then they're going to become available.
Yeah.
So depends on, if they're grayed out, you can't use them.
I just hadn't done anything. So
Yep.
that's what it was.
Yep. So if you haven't done anything, it's going to be gray.
Yeah.
And then as soon as you start doing stuff too, it's going to now give you an asterisk next to that name because you've made changes. It's also going to put an asterisk up here at the end of the file name showing that you've made changes. And it's going to change your save button here to black instead of the grayed out look because now we can save stuff because we've actually done stuff. Okay. So when you're working on things and you're like, oh man, you get a call or you have to go to the bathroom or whatever, and you forget where you were at, this is a visual indicator that you've done something that isn't saved, and so you might want to save it, right? Save often. Auto backup, we have it by default set to save every 10 minutes, 7 minutes, 10 minutes, something like that. So it will auto backup every 10 minutes in case it crashes or something happens. But really it's a best practice, just save often. And also, I kind of, if you're in your flow and doing stuff, you don't want to just take time away from what you're doing to save your files. But if I've gotten 10 minutes into something or 15 minutes into something and I'm like, take a breath, save, right? Just because things do happen, computers crash, power goes out, there's a lot going on in the back end. You know, iTunes might decide that it wants to close CorelDRAW. It happens every once in a while. So
Cat walks on your keyboard.
yes, exactly. So save often. Yeah. All right, so we have not saved yet though. So it's going to give us that asterisk right there. So what we're going to do is we're going to either double click on the text or grab the text tool. Either way, whatever you like to do, click in there. I like to, once I do that, hit Control and A on the keyboard. The reason I do that, Control A means select all. Almost always it means select all. Okay? And so by selecting all, it's going to select all the text that currently exists.
Yeah. In that row?
In that, yeah. So the way that text works is you can have multiple rows of text. Okay? But with this particular design, each of these rows of text is broken apart into just a single line of text. So we've got 4 individual lines of text here. So when you hit Control A, it's only going to select the name there. If we hit Control A and it selected all 4 lines, then you'd know it's all part of the same group of text. Okay. Now this is one downside to not having more than 2 hours in a day to work, Tammy, is, or whoever, you Joyce, said that I've only got 2 hours a day. The templates that we've had since like 1995. And so there are old fonts. Most of them have our old fonts in there, which all start with MM-something. It is on my list of things to do to fix these templates. It's actually pretty high up on my list for this year, so hopefully by the end of this year I'll have these all fixed. But these fonts that start with MM are our older fonts, which didn't have very good kerning and also didn't have like lowercase letters and that sort of stuff. So I like to not use those fonts anymore. And so what we're going to do is we're going to not only change the name, so let's go ahead and select Control A. This particular SKS font, again, if I just type in, I'm holding Shift and I type J, that'll do an uppercase J. If I do an E, you'll see it's a box, right? That's because that font never had a lowercase glyph for the letter E, and so it's just going to show up as a box. And so if I don't type in all caps with that particular font, it's not going to look good. So Jeremy, Andrew. Jerry. See, I've already changed it. Jeremy. Okay? Everybody with me so far? So we changed that name. We're already in the text tool because that was what we were in. So we're just going to move our cursor over to the next block of text. Don't click anywhere yet, unless you've already done it. That's okay. But if you look at the cursor, you see how right now it's just kind of a crosshair with a letter A? That is going to make it start new text. I don't want to start new text. I want to edit existing text. So as I move my cursor over the text, it'll switch to this other cursor icon, which is, I don't know, like a eye or something. I think it's to kind of show that carrot looking thing. Anyway, so the cursor will change as you get over the text. And that's what you want, is this particular cursor, because then when I click, it's going to, again, start inside that text box. I hit Control A again and type in all caps again, Buchanan. I don't have to type in all caps if I don't want to, but because I'm in this font, I need to. Okay. Same thing with November. I'm just going to move over to November, click in there, Control A. So February 20th, 1942. So I have had customers ask why not just always be in caps, like all the time? And My answer for that is because all those Gerber users are always using caps all the time. And so when they email me, it's always yelling at me. No, sometimes it's that way. I don't use cap locks on the keyboard. Some people do. My daughter, who is 20, she's never learned how to use shift, I guess. So she hits cap locks, types it in, hits cap locks to end it. Maybe. I mean, that's okay if you do it that way. That's fine. I just use my pinky on the shift key while I'm typing. So whatever works best for you. Okay. And then we'll do the same thing for this last. Control A. August 31st, 2022. Okay. Everybody have their names changed? Now what I want to do is change the font. Since I really don't like this old font, we're going to change it. We could have done it to begin with, and I'm going to show you both ways, just because you can choose which one you like best. I like best to change it all at the same time if they're all going to be the same font. So I'll grab my pick tool, which is the top one over here in the toolbox. We've already got something selected, but by clicking out here in the white area, it will deselect everything. Okay, nothing will be selected anymore. Or you can hit escape on the keyboard, that'll clear your selection too. And what we're going to do is just anywhere in this white area, as long as we're not too far this way, and as long as we don't drag too far this way, we can just click up here, drag a box, and all I want to do is make sure that all of the text itself is inside that blue dotted box. And if I let go, it's going to grab just the text. If I was back here a little ways, and I selected like this and went way down here, it's also going to grab the panel, which is not what I want. So when I'm trying to do a multi-select, I'm usually just looking where in this white area can I click and drag and make sure that my box is, going to only select those and nothing else. Alternatively, if you want to multi-select, you can click on one and holding the shift key, click on the next one and click on the next one and click on the next one. So shift will add to your selection. It will also subtract from your selection if it's already selected. So if I had accidentally gone too big and I grabbed my panel, I can hold shift, click on my panel, click on my design, and it will deselect those things that were already selected. Okay, so shift plus clicking the pick tool is going to add or subtract. And you can tell again down here what you've got selected. I've got 4 objects selected now. Okay. Now with the fonts, again, you can see from my machine, I've got 1,000 fonts installed on this computer, okay, which is way more than I need because all Brooksy's going to let me sell is just modified Roman anyway. And so there's a whole bunch of fonts in my list. If you scroll down to MD, there's going to be ones that start with MD. Those are Monument and Memorial Designer specific fonts, okay? And so we've got one called MD Roman, and that's the one that I have as default to replace this old MMSKS one. So you can either click in the list and scroll and find it, or the reason that I've named these the way that I've named them is so that I can use keyboard shortcuts to get to them quickly. So if I just click in here and type in MDR, it's going to go to MD Roman. Just up in the font drop down. So if I type MDR and then hit enter, it's going to switch over to using the MD Roman font instead of that old SKS one.
And if those fonts didn't download, you're going to show us how to do that.
Yeah, if you don't have them, we'll put them on at lunch tomorrow for you. No.
Yes.
What's that?
How did you get your printing window so big?
How did I get this window? Yeah, so by default, it's kind of small. The list itself, if you go down to the very bottom corner or the side bottom, I usually go to the bottom corner. There's a little box. If you click, sorry, I should look here. So if you click right in that bottom corner and drag, you can make it larger or smaller. Yeah, so it's going to show you down there. It'll also show you in the document itself as you scroll what it looks like. But most of the time with this particular text drop down, because it's in the middle of the screen, that's not very useful. But if you wanted to look at this design and decide on different fonts, especially if you got a customer sitting there with you when you get to that point, over here on the right is there's a Docker called text. So in the text Docker, it also has that same drop down. And so it's over to the right instead of in the middle of my document. And so as I move over these, it will actually switch it, and that way you can just kind of scroll through and decide which one you like best. So I like to do that with customers while they're watching, or even myself, just looking at what I think looks good.
1,000 fonts that they can choose from.
Yes, that is true. If you're sitting there with customers, you want to make sure you're only showing them stuff you want to show them, right? And because of that, the font drop-down itself has what's called filters. So there's this little funnel-looking filter tool. If you click on that filter tool, you can filter to Monument.
Is there a favorites?
There is a favorites, but I've never used it.
It would be nice just to put like your top 10.
Yeah, so I've never used it, so I don't. You could try. Definitely try. Yeah, what I normally do instead is I keep all the fonts that I really want in a folder, and then I have Corel Font Manager look at that folder. And so if you look, at least on the installs that I've been doing recently, there's a Monument Fonts folder that I'm pointing at. If you don't have that, then we can make it. But basically, I'm putting all the Monument fonts in one folder. And so that way, if I add things later, it automatically pops up in that list by just throwing them into that folder. And that way, I'm only showing the 11 fonts that I want to show people. Right?
Issues with the grab of the letters. Like it seems like it's so tight here.
Okay, so you're in the text tool. So you need to switch over to the pick tool, which is that top one up there. Yeah. And then you'll click and drag. Yep, and then just drag down here, down to this corner. So that your box, all the text needs to be inside that blue box. And then let go.
Okay, but
Okay.
it
It didn't grab that because you weren't wide enough to grab that. It has to be completely inside that box in order for it to become selected.
If you
Gotcha.
drag to the right,
Yeah,
it grabs only when everything's in it.
yeah,
If we go to the left,
I got it.
anything it touches.
And then now I can go to the font.
And then now you can switch it, yeah. So, what was your name again? Kevin. Right? Okay.
My hoodie off.
Okay, so Kevin brought up a good question. He said that his selection tool wasn't working for some reason, and since we had August 31st selected before, and we had the text tool selected, he was still using the text tool. Okay? What happens when you still have the text tool selected and you click and drag a box is it's going to create something called paragraph text, which now he's created new text, which if I type a whole bunch of stuff, you'll see it's just going to let me type all sorts of stuff inside that box. CorelDRAW has two basic types of text. There's what's called artistic and paragraph. Paragraph text is very useful when you need to use it. For the most part, I'm almost 99% of the time using artistic text. The reason for that is I don't like a box around what I'm doing. Okay? I don't like kind of being stuck inside that box. Text flows differently in a paragraph text box than it would otherwise. Really, there's two things I use paragraph text for, and that's for like veteran memorials. If you're doing a whole bunch of columns of names, you can do columns really easily. Or if you're trying to fit text inside a specific shape, then you can make a paragraph text box that shape and fit it inside. But other than those two things, I'm going to use paragraph text or artistic text, which the difference when it comes to the text tool, when you're in this icon where you've got the little A, if you just click, it's going to start artistic text. If you click and drag, it's going to start paragraph text. Okay? And that's really when you're creating new text, the difference, how you do one or the other. But that's what happened was you're creating paragraph text because it's not actually a selection tool. Okay? So instead, he needs to go back to the pick tool, which is used for selecting things, and then drag with the pick tool. Okay?
Cameron, if you are in the artistic, so you create one line of text and you hit your enter key, that now becomes.
It's still artistic text.
Okay.
Okay? You can hit the enter key and have multiple lines of text. That's fine. They just act differently. So if I had...
Paragraph.
No, a paragraph is going to have a box around it, and then it's going to have these tabs and this little handle down here. So if I type in, this is paragraph, okay, you'll see how as I typed that, it moved down to the next line. Because it's stuck in this box, it has to fit from left to right. So if I made this box bigger, it's going to let me do that. Okay? But because it's a paragraph text box, it's going to go down automatically to the next line. If I did artistic text and I said, this is paragraph text, I can keep going forever until I hit that 1800 inches limit. So they do act differently. But if I hit enter on this one, this is still artistic. I should have said this was artistic. If I hit enter on this, I can type this is still paragraph. But you'll see how it just works differently. Okay? And so you can fit paragraph text into a shape. Yeah. And really, as an example, I've done like footprints in the sand poem, and I made it look like a footprint, that kind of thing. Or a teardrop stone, and I wanted it to fit to the teardrop. That kind of stuff you can do with paragraph text. Easier than if you're just doing it with artistic. But I use artistic text most often for a couple of different reasons. One, there's no box that's in your way when you're looking at your design, right? So if I'm showing this, and I always like to draw or design in front of customers while they're watching. When I had my own shop, I would do it with them while they participated. And so visually, it's just a lot easier on the eyes to look at this. The other is I've just got more control by, being able to click on these things separate from each other, that I can change sizes and fonts and stuff individually. I find faster than if I'm swiping text and changing it that way. Okay. All right. So when it comes to the text, and I mentioned this before, everybody's now got all of their text to MD Roman. Okay. If you, while all 4 of your lines of text are selected, change this number up here, it's going to change all 4 of them at the same time. So go ahead and do that if you want. You'll notice what happens. Because I had all of them selected at the same time, it's able to apply that size to everything at the same time. And then as soon as you do it and don't like the look of it, go ahead and hit Control-Z to undo. But my point is that you can change multiple lines of text all at the same time if they're all selected at the same time. Okay. And then as far as this design goes, that's really all I wanted to change, is just text. So now I want to color it in with a granite color. Okay. I chose Bahama Blue, so over here on the right, you want to choose your Fills tab. And your granite colors are probably not going to be as zoomed in. There is a little slider down here at the bottom that will let you slide how big those swatches of color are. Okay. I'm really particular when I'm looking at my what's on screen. So if I had it like that, I wouldn't like that very much because there's a whole bunch of gray space over here. And so what I do is I'll usually click on the actual cursor itself, the slider cursor, and using my arrow keys, if I just hit a right arrow or left arrow, it's going to make it a little bit bigger every time I hit the arrow button. And so for the bottom ones, I actually like a row of 3. So I'll just hit the left arrow until it gets to 3 of them, and then I'll just hit the right arrow until it's, filling up that whole gray area. You can do whatever you want. It's personalized to what you want, but that's the way that I like it, is to have the swatches big enough that I can see them, But I don't need, I don't need them huge.
Cameron, do those colors change? Because sometimes I feel like I have different color options some days than others.
They shouldn't change. There are reasons that they could change. The files themselves that are the colors, if those got moved, like some of these didn't work, they didn't have their colors pointed in the right place, that can make a difference. So if your files are getting moved, that can mess things up. These ones down here at the bottom are not going to change. They're alphabetical the way that they list. Unless you're on a Mac, then it's like a reverse alphabet. I don't know. They alphabetize differently on a Mac apparently. But they're alphabetical based on the name of the folder. And so that's how they show up in this part. The top option, which is your favorites, if you use favorites, those ones can move, okay? And you just click and drag those and they will move. So it depends on if you're in the favorites section at the top or if you're in the whole section down here of your fills. Because I'm looking for Bahama Blue, it's alphabetical, so I can just come down into the B's, and I've got two Bahama Blues. I've got this one that is my older Bahama Blue, and then I've got this one which is Bahama Blue HD. If your color has an HD after it, what that means is that it's a higher definition color swatch that we've done since the originals that we created. So I almost always use the HD versions just because I like them better for the most part. If you move your mouse, your cursor over, it's going to show you what that is named. Okay, so it's going to tell you Bahama Blue. If it's Wausau or something, at the bottom of the list and you don't want to scroll through 100 different colors, there is a search down here now at the bottom. If you don't have the search, it's because it's a recent update. So if you don't have that, then let me know and we can get you updated. But the search will also let me click there and then just type in Bahama and hit enter. And then it's going to only show me, Bahama. Okay. So Bahama Blue HD is the one I want you to click on. And when it comes to granite fills, selection matters. So if you have something selected like the panel and you click Bahama Blue, it's only going to fill in the panel. Okay? And that's not what I want. I want to fill everything. So I usually deselect, click out in the white area, nothing is selected, and then I can hit Bahama Blue and it will do everything all at the same time. If yours does not do that, if it's not automatically selecting everything, there are settings here that will say prompt if nothing is selected. That's an option. So if I have that as an option and I have nothing selected and then I click on the button, it's going to say nothing was selected. Would you like to fill all objects? And then I say yes. I find it faster to not have it ask me every time, so I uncheck that box. These are the boxes that I have checked. If you want to compare your boxes to mine, these are the ones that I prefer to have checked now. Is just the third one and then the bottom two. The settings is going to be at the bottom of the favorite section. So if your favorites is the only thing you're seeing, it's going to be at the bottom of the screen. If this is bigger, then it's going to be kind of in the middle. Now, if Bahama Blue is something I sell a lot, then I want to make it a favorite, right? Because I get to it a lot. Or because I can also do other things as well. So Bahama Blue, if you want to make it a favorite, and it currently isn't a favorite, if you have nothing or only some things in your favorites list, down in the main granite fill section, okay, if you find a color that you like, and you're like, I like that one, right click on it, and click on the little heart favorite icon. And that's going to pop it up to the top section. Okay? If you have a favorite and you don't want it anymore, you're like, I hate you now, Desert Rose, you right click on it and you unfavorite it. And that's how it goes away.
That makes you feel better too.
Yes, definitely. And you probably won't have a Desert Rose because that's one that we've been working on, so you're not likely going to have that one. Okay. So favoriting, unfavoriting. Another thing you can do if you right click on a color is you can go to settings. Under settings, you can name it whatever you want. So if you don't like the name Bahama Blue HD, you can call it really pretty blue or whatever, really expensive blue. Whatever you want to call it to your customer, you can have that there so that it's kind of customer facing. Name them what you want. The size is by default how big your tile size is going to be. In order for us to keep our granite fill sizes smaller and keep your file sizes smaller, we tile the design. So if we look at this 2x1 without anything on top of it, you'll notice that there is a little black, this little piece here. It's also right here because it's tiling every 12 inches. So there's a 12-inch tile there and then a 12-inch tile there. Okay. We've built our tiles, our swatches, to be as seamless as we can so that you don't notice that. But if you go to something like this, you're going to notice it a lot more. Okay. So the tile is how big by default that's going to create that color swatch. The defaults that I have for these are set because I'm doing them life size to the way that I scanned the colors in. So I wouldn't suggest changing them, but if you want to, you certainly can. But what it's going to do is, if we were to switch it to 24 inches, for instance, it's going to take that 12-inch swatch and it's going to make it 24 inches, which means that it's zoomed in and not really accurate to life size anymore. Okay. But just so you know, those settings do exist there. And then the other thing that exists is tags now, where if you've got the same color but you call it different things like Morning Rose or American Pink or North American whatever, Vermilion, whatever you call it, if you want to put tags in there, you certainly can, so that when you're searching for things, you can find things that exist already. Okay, so that's what those settings are for. But Bahama Blue is the one that we wanted, Bahama Blue HD. So hopefully all of you have clicked Bahama Blue HD and now it looks like that. Does anybody not look like this?
Cameron,
Yes.
script here every time we go over into the colors. And I've tried to restart it.
Yeah, if you get an error like that, it's because it can't find the fills, and so we need to point them to where they go.
Okay.
Or it can't find the actual stuff on the back end, so we'll need to fix that. Yeah. All right, so we've got that. Then the next thing that I do when I send this out to a customer, if I'm sending it out to a customer, is I like to add a background to it so that it's got my logo and that sort of stuff.
I feel like we need to save.
This is a good thing. Yes, I like where you're headed. We've made our changes. We've got it exactly how we want. We should save it. Okay. We don't want to hit the save button because it's going to save as 151, right? It's going to save as our template. Yeah. Back when I first started the templates, I wasn't very smart, and it was just for me, and I didn't care, and so I'm like, who's going to overwrite my design? But it happens. And so in an update in the future, it'll be a little different. But for now, if you hit save, it's going to save over the original. Okay. So instead of hitting save, you want to go up to File and say Save As. And that's going to then let you save this design as something completely different than the template that you started with. I personally, when I was my own headstone shop, kept everything under the Documents folder. And then I kept it under Memorial Designer. And then I had a current work folder, which is everything that I was working on at the time. Okay, and I'd keep everything under that folder, and so that's where I would save stuff. You navigate to the folder you want to save in first. So wherever you want to save your file, go to that folder, and then down at the bottom here, there's file name. Instead of 151, this is where I would do an order number if I already had an order number. I don't in this case, but I'm just going to make one up to say that I do. So 144000. That's my order number. I do a space. I do Buchanan, comma, Jeremy, Andrew. If I had a wife on there as well, I would do and Stella or whatever. Okay, that's just my file naming convention. You can do whatever you want. If you're just working in your own office and you're just working on your own CorelDRAW, you don't really have to mess with anything else down here. But if you're trying to send this file to somebody else that also has Memorial Designer or CorelDRAW, but maybe they've got an older version, there is this option here to down save to an older version. The version numbers, so 2020 is actually version 22. Basically what they did was in 2017, instead of going by number, they, actually, let me step back. In version 13, they changed the naming convention to X3, so there wasn't an unlucky 13. So there was a CorelDRAW X3, and then they kept that for a while. It was X4, X5, X6, X7, X8. And then after X8, they're like, now we're going to start doing yearly releases. So they switched to yearly naming conventions. So it's 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021, 2022. And now they've decided that they're pushing subscription. So now it's still going to show up as 2023, but in the upper left-hand corner where it says the name of the program, it no longer says the number, it's just CorelDRAW. So for here on out, 2023 and above, it's just going to say CorelDRAW until they decide something different.
Cameron, quick question about the fills. If there's not a granite color in there that we need, would that be a request we would make to you, or
You-
do we put that in yourself?
You can request it to me. I'm pretty slow when it comes to granite colors. This desert rose I've been working on for 3 years probably. So I mean you can, but I don't know if you'll see it anytime soon.
Okay. Good to know.
If you want to create your own, there is a save button right down here, and you click on that, and then it pulls up a template where you put your things in there, and then you can build your own fill.
I would just put a JPEG in there?
Yeah, you just throw JPEGs in there. So here's the caveat is like I said before, we've made our fills tile very well, seamlessly. And it takes some work to do that. But you can certainly do it. Okay. If you don't tile it well, it's just gonna have a line kind of in between, where they tile. But yeah. So there is a way to create your own fills if you have something that you want to build. And if you do build your own fill and you want to share it with everybody else, let me know. We can add it to the installer and everybody else can have your fill. If you want to keep it to yourself, that's fine too. The way that the granite fills themselves work, if we go to Windows File Explorer and go to our Memorial Designer folder, there's a granite fills folder. And then there's a fills folder inside of there. So this template is what pops up when you hit that save button. This fills folder here shows you all of the different fills that you have. And then this favorites folder is just housing the favorites. So if you have favorites and you want to share your favorites with her so that your favorites are the same, you would just save this one favorites file between the two of you. And then it'll be named the same, it'll be the same files, everything. So if you're in an organization that has, 8 designers and you want them all to be the same, just have that favorites fill the same for everybody. The fills folders themselves, every fill is contained inside its own folder. So you can see we've got 101 different fill colors. If you wanted to create one like Chapel Rose that we've got, if you share that folder with somebody else, they can throw it into theirs and then they're going to have it. Inside that folder are all the different fills. You've got polish and rough and starburst and frost and all those different things, plus the settings. But that is how the fills work as far as files structure goes. Okay. So we've got this design done. We're going to save. We saved it. Did anybody not save? You're good? As soon as you save, do you see how this disk turned gray? The little save icon, it's now grayed out. The reason it's grayed out is because nothing has changed since we saved it, so that shows that it's in a saved state. There's also no asterisks anymore behind the file name, which means that there's nothing been changed. Okay. The next thing that we're going to do is add a background. So I've got this add background button right here. If you're on the most recent update, if you click on that button, it's going to pull in a background and automatically size it around your design. If you don't, it's going to pull up something different. So if you click it and it brings in a blue background, then you're on an older version. If you're on the latest version, it's going to bring in a background. If it doesn't bring in a background, then something's hosed and we need to fix it. Okay? Something's hosed.
Or you can create your own background.
Yeah, so if...
But we're not getting the background, we're getting the text.
Okay.
Okay, if you're getting an error, that means it's not pointing to the right place. Okay, and I'll show you where these are located. So if you hold Control on the keyboard and click on this AI export button right here, so you're going to hold Control and click the AI export button. It's going to pull up a dialog of import-export folder locations, and it's got all of the import items are at the top, and then your export items are at the bottom. So the background one is the second one down.
Can you show how to get to that again?
Yeah, you hold Control on the keyboard and click the AI export button. Yep. Okay, so it pulls up this folder location. Background is what you're looking for. So there's a little folder icon to the right of that. If you click on that folder, it'll pull up again your folder structure. And what you're going to look for is your Documents folder, a Memorial Designer folder, Memorial Designer, and then there's an Import folder in there. There should be. And in that import folder is where those files exist. So you just hit select folder, and then if you're pointing to the right place and the files exist, it should work. If it's not, then we need to fix it. Colleen, it looks like yours is not.
I got no files.
Yes,
I don't either.
So it's not going to show you any files. It's just going to be pointing. Yeah, and then you just hit select folder. So if you look, so on Colleen's, hers has changed the path. And the reason that it's changing, and a lot of times the reason that it's not showing up, is because Microsoft recently has pushed moving your Documents folder into OneDrive, because they own OneDrive, and they're like, oh, let's push it. So a lot of people's Documents folders, without even knowing that it happened, have been moved into your OneDrive folder. And so if it's not currently mapped there, you need to map it if it's moved. Okay.
We just did that with hers.
We just did that with hers. Yours has been moved to your desktop.
Yeah, I found it. I happen to have the same publishing, so I just did what you did.
Yep.
And then I go back to.
That dark blue, go to that dark blue box. Yeah.
Yep. There you go.
Nailed it.
Got it. Yep. Good.
Thank you.
Okay.
Nailed it.
Stacia, did you get it working back on your end?
If the OneDrive is showing, it's mapping to the OneDrive.
Okay. That was loud.
So lunchtime bell.
That was not.
Nice. Nice.
Well, see, our stomachs are on East Coast time.
My friend.
Right?
Okay, so you guys are on another version.
So this is my nice, I sent out to my customers, so I'm so sorry.
That's because you read properly, read correctly.
Well, I have.
It wasn't a bad choice.
Okay,
But I mean, you know, like, I got you. He's like,
No one was
but
yeah.
some.
Yep, similar Phillips. And so, yeah.
He's just here.
What?
Yeah, he didn't enjoy this.
No, he would not enjoy this. He would enjoy the physical part.
Okay. So, everybody else, good. Oh. No, you got it. All right. So the big difference with new code versus what you guys have from 4 years ago is what we did. The biggest change that we made is that the add background button will find your selection, or if you have nothing selected, it'll find everything, and then it will fit your background around it. Before it didn't do that. And so what you'd have to do is your background would be like this, and you'd have to move it over here, and then you'd have to stretch it out, so it took extra time. So now what the add background button does is if you have something selected, it's going to only add it around the selection. Because this is the only thing we have on the screen, it doesn't matter, so we just clicked on it. And then it put our background around everything, okay? When it brings in the background file, if we look at down here on the bottom, it says bk.cdr. When you bring in another file into your current file, it's called an import. So instead of opening that file, we're importing something into the current file that we have. And when it does that, it does two things. It groups it, so it's all a group together so that it's easy to move around. And it gives you the name of the file that you brought in so that you can see what it is. Okay. So this is bk.cdr, which is our standard background when you click on that button. The background button now actually has 4 different versions that you can do. And so if you wanted to, you can hold Control. So you've already clicked on it, right? So to delete it, all you would do is just click anywhere on the background itself, make sure that's selected, and just hit the delete button. And now it's gone. If you hold Control and click, it's going to bring in a different background. Okay? So there's 4 different ones you can have now based on whether you're holding Control, Shift, Control and Shift, or nothing. And those 4 backgrounds that it's able to bring in, you have full control over. You can edit them in any way you want. You can add your own template. You can add your own logos, your own wording, anything like that. And we would, want you to.
How do you save it?
So the files themselves, if we go back to Open, and we go back to our Memorial Designer folder, there's an import folder there. This is what we had pointed to before. Those files are going to show up here. Okay. So bk.cdr, that's the one that that comes in automatically. If we open up that file, now this is the file, the template. Okay, if I get rid of my logo because I don't want it anymore, and I hit the save button, it's going to overwrite. It's going to save over the existing template that we provided for you. And so by overwriting that template, you're now, whenever you click on that button, it's going to come in without that logo because we saved it without the logo.
But if they want to drop in their own logo,
drop in your own logo, drop in your own
import it.
text, whatever.
Yeah, you
Yep.
import it and then you would save it.
You're going to open the bk.cdr, and then you're going to save over the top of the original bk.cdr. Yep. The biggest, most important thing with the new code on any template that you want to create for the backgrounds is if we hit V on the keyboard, it's going to switch to the wireframe view. It's just a toggle, so if you hit V, you'll toggle back and forth between your enhanced view and your wireframe. There's a rectangle right here that if we look on down at the bottom, it's called MD_safe zone. That's how it knows where to fit your design. Okay? If I had my safe zone like this, and I saved my file, then when I pull in my design, my background design, it's going to end up going over the text because my safe zone is, bigger than that text. And so wherever you want your picture to be fit to in your template, that's where you would make your safe zone. And that's how it knows on the back end where to put stuff. Okay? Now, I made changes, right? But because I'm still in the same folder, I haven't closed anything out, I can hit Control-Z to undo. I can hit Control-Z to undo, and I can save it again. And it's going to now bring it back to the way that it was before, because those steps there were, just in my undo history. So I did not break it. I just undid what I did. And now if I click on the button again, it's going to bring it in just the way that it did before. Okay?
All the information that's in the bottom here, like the cemetery information, so how do we alter that?
Okay, so that's what we're going to do next. When it comes in as a group. Okay? And so when things are in a group, they act a little differently than if they're not grouped together. Luckily, if it's just text that we're changing, your text tool digs inside groups automatically pretty easily. So if you switch over to your text tool, and then you just highlight over one of those text things, you make sure your text cursor changes from that one with the A to the up and down looking thing. And I gotta come up with a name. It's probably already got a name. And you'll see now if I click in there, my handles are circles. The reason that they're circles instead of squares indicates that this is part of a group. So I'm actually digging into a text object that's grouped with other stuff. And so that's why my handles are circles. If it was ungrouped, they'd be squares. But basically, it's the same thing that we did before with the text. You just click in there, you hit Control A, and then you change it. So 144000. Over here, stone order, I'm going to click it. I'm going to hit Control A, and I'm going to say Bahama Blue. And I'm going to say it's a flat marker. And I'm going to say it's 24 by 12 by 4, and it's polished on the top, and it's rough around the edges. You know, however you want to type stuff, like that. That's how you make the changes to what exists. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to change to today's date, which is 1/16/2023. These pieces here I don't want because I don't have more than one piece of information. I don't have more than one stone. So I don't need stone order 2, 3, or 1. If I click on them, it's not going to click on them. It's going to click on my group, right? If you have a group, you can hold Control, and holding Control, you click, and it will dig inside that group. So I'm able to click on stone order 2 by holding Control when I click on it, and then I could just hit delete on the keyboard. It'll get rid of it. So delete on the keyboard.
And that's where you put the base and stuff.
Delete, yeah, if you do your base, if you've got bases and flower vases and that sort of stuff, then I usually type that information
So it's a
in.
group. Could you also use the ungroup?
The other option is to use ungroup. If it is a group, your property bar up here is going to show you these two icons, ungroup and ungroup all. Okay? If it wasn't a group, those wouldn't show up. But because there is a grouped object, those show up. And so what you could do is just ungroup them, and then it acts like anything else that's all by itself. You see how those are now squares instead of circles? Because it's not part of a group anymore. The benefit for keeping it as a group is that if you wanted to get rid of it, you can just click on it and hit delete, and now you've got your design without anything else around it. If it was ungrouped and you've got something else there, now it's like, well, how do I select everything but this? It's not that hard to do. You can just select everything, okay? And then holding Shift, you can drag a box around just the stone, and that'll deselect it. But it's easier if you keep it as a group to delete the whole group, okay? And it'll show up as one object instead of a whole bunch. The one thing with templates that's important, and I don't even know if I have mine set this way, I don't think I do, is my text is currently set for all black, which means that if I change this color to blue, for instance, when I do my fill, it's going to change all my text to blue as well, because it was black to begin with. So in my templates, what you want to do is not have this pure black. You want to do something really close to pure black. So to change a color to something other than what it currently is, if you double click this icon right here, it'll pull up your fill. And then you can tell it, I want this to be, instead of 100% black, I want it to be 98% black. And then it's not going to get messed with when it comes to these. So, and you really only have to do that once on your template, and just make sure everything's not really pure black. Okay, so we've got that, right? Again, if you want to, we've made some changes so we can save it. Because we've previously saved the file, we don't have to do a save as. We can just hit the disk or Control S, and it's going to save your file. And now our file is saved. Again, it's going to go back to a grayed out icon showing us that it's done.
I have a question.
Yep.
What is it saving it as? Then a CDR at this point?
Yeah, so by default, CorelDRAW, when you hit save, it's going to save as a CDR file, a CorelDRAW file.
Okay.
Yep.
But I want to email it to my customer, so I want to turn it
Okay,
into
so
JPEG.
if email's your next step, then the easiest way to do that is hit this JPEG button up here, or hit J on the keyboard. And what that'll do is it'll export this out as a JPEG, and it sends it to the Memorial Designer /proofs folder by default. That's where it's going to go. it saves your file name as the same thing that your CorelDRAW file name is. It's just going to change it to a JPEG file instead of a CorelDRAW file. And I often do JPEGs when I'm sending out to people for two reasons. One is that it's a bitmap file that's not a vector anymore, so it's not going to be editable on their end. They can't just take it to your competition and say, cut this. The other is that it doesn't really require any special viewer. You don't need a PDF viewer, which nowadays PDF's getting to that point too. But most anything will open a JPEG file natively. And you can text it and whatever, so it's pretty easy.
And it saves it to a file that's size that's manageable, so it's not super huge, correct?
Yeah, so
like emailing.
Correct. So because we're doing this life size, we're at 25 inches by 19 inches. When it exports out the file, it is going to save it. So it saves it to your proofs folder by default, which is in Documents, and then Memorial Designer, and then Proofs. Now, Colleen's is not going to go there because the OneDrive issue, so she'd have to repoint it to her Proofs folder. Was yours doing the same thing? Okay.
No, mine didn't even bring it in.
Yeah, so yours isn't going to do it. Hold Control and click on the AI button again. The AI export. Hold Control, click on it. And then, so the Proofs one is the JPEG folder. Click on the folder, the second one down. Right there. And then you're going to go click on Memorial Designer up at the top here. And then click on Proofs there. And then click Select. And then hit Close. Now when you hit the JPEG button, it's going to go to that folder. So nothing was selected, so it says, do you want to select everything? You say yes, and it'll send everything out. The reason that it asks you that is because if you have multiple stones or multiple things on in your document, and you only want to send one thing out, then it'll just do the selection.
Or if you have something selected, it only saves that.
Yes, if you have just Buchanan selected and you click that button, it's only going to save Buchanan.
So if we wanted to save it to a different place, that's how we do it. Is through that, because like if we share stuff on Drive.
Yeah, if you use Google Drive or something else to share files, then just switch it to that location.
Like Tammy and I, we share files. So we save it into all of our customer files, though.
Yeah.
They'll go to Proofs, but then we still save it.
Yeah, wherever you want that folder, you can manipulate that using that button. Yep. Okay, so now we've got a JPEG, and if we go to our Proofs folder, it's going to be there. The way that the tool works is if you click it once, it's going to save it as the same thing. If you click it again, it's going to give you a dash and then a numerical number for however many times you click it. So -2, -3, -4, -5, whatever. So if you want to do multiple versions in different colors, you can do that. You make it one color, send it out, switch the color, send it out. That way you can give them different options, right? But Julia, you asked about resolution. It's going to be 1920 pixels wide, which is standard HD resolution on a monitor. But it's small enough that it's only, it's less than a megabyte, so it emails really quickly.
Okay, it's ours.
Yeah. If your customer is sitting there in front of you, you don't need to send them a JPEG, right? That's where Quick Print comes into play. This fifth icon over on the top is Quick Print. And what that's meant to do is you click on that and it will print out whatever you've got to your default printer so that you can share it with your customer right then and there. And my default printer is, I don't even know what my default printer is. File, print. If you want to change your default, you go to File and Print. This shows my default printer is that one. So you can change that if you need to. All right. So we have successfully designed a stone. Well, most of us. We have colored the stone. We've saved the file. We've sent it to the customer. Now, what about when we want to produce the file? Okay. If we want to actually send this to a cutter, what do?
Send it to my sister.
Yes, then you send it to Tammy and she takes care of it. No. All right. So the last thing that we're going to do is we're going to get this ready for production. Okay? Before I told you down at the bottom, there you can have multiple pages in one document. This is where I utilize pages most often. Is I've got a tool that if you select just the stone, okay, so we're going to come out here. And if you click right in here, you might accidentally hit that, the edge of that. And so I usually just come out here somewhere. You click and drag, and then you let go so that just the stone itself was in your selection, and that should select, if you did it right, 7 objects. If you didn't do it right, then come back tomorrow. No, I'm just kidding. Did anybody not be able to select those 7 objects? Okay, so when you select those objects, all we're doing is we're selecting what we want to cut. Okay, once we have that selected, up here at the top is a plot page button. And so I will click on the plot page, and it will take whatever we had, and now it's going to throw it to a second page on the bottom called plot. It takes out all the fills. It got rid of the granite fills, got rid of the color in the lettering, and just gives us our outlines. Page 1 is our original thing that we were working with. That stays the same. This is just our plot page. The reason that I do this is so that I can manipulate this plot if I need to fix it or do anything with it. Some people don't like to plot the whole outline of the stone, for instance, okay? And so if you don't want to plot everything, you can use your shape tool and edit that shape if you wanted to make edits to it. And it's not going to mess with the original. So that's why I use 2 pages, is so that I've got my original one that I don't have to mess with. Because a lot of the time, Jeremy's brother or somebody else is going to see that design and say, oh, I really like that. And maybe if we had changed it a little bit more from the 151 template, it's a saved file that we've made edits to. And so we can go back and open up that saved file that we've got. Now, I have had customers that don't save their files. I think it boggles the mind why you wouldn't save stuff. I would suggest saving your files and saving them for a long, long time. We've got files back to the 90s, 80s that we can refer back to, right? And so I would save everything. And I've had that before. I mean, we don't even have our monument shop anymore, but there's a monument shop in Loveland, Colorado that is duplicating or doing death dates or whatever for our stones that we did 10 years ago. And so I can go back and load that up and send them the file and they can cut it. So I would save your files. And by doing it this way, your plot page, everything you did for production actually gets saved in the same file. So 10 years from now, if you wanted to see what you did for production, it's in that same file. And so it's organizationally, I find it easier to have everything in one file as opposed to multiples. Okay. Now, I don't know where this design came from. It's so old, but you might notice that you see right here this and this and this and this. They're just a little darker than the rest. That's a visual indicator to me that there's more than one object on top of each other there, okay? I don't use this remove duplicates button often. I know some people that use it like every stone. I wouldn't suggest using it every stone just because the remove duplicates button, what it does is, for one thing, text, it won't be text anymore. It'll be converted to curves. But if I grab this, okay, and I hit my remove duplicates button, it will say 8 objects deleted. So it went and found the duplicates and it deleted them for me. Up at the top is the one that's got a X2 remove duplicates. If I had done it on the whole stone, if I had done it on the whole stone instead of just the just that one piece, so if I selected the whole stone, and a way to select everything with your pick tool, you already know Control A selects everything with the keyboard, but double clicking the pick tool also does the same thing. So double clicking the pick tool will select everything that's on in your document. And then if I hit the X2, it would do the same steps, except that the text, it breaks it up and converts it to curves so that it can see if there's text on top of text. So this is no longer editable text, which isn't a big deal because I'm just cutting it. I don't need it to be editable. But once it's broken, you can't go back unless you hit Control Z.
It's not broken on the first page, though. It's only broken
Right,
on this page.
only on this page, which again is why I have a separate page so that I can do all that kind of stuff here and not worry about messing with my original. Yeah, exactly.
And some images have duplicates and some don't, and we don't know why, and we don't necessarily know for sure if they do or not.
So this particular one definitely does have those corner things. What I will do when I notice stuff like this in my templates, I fix them, save over the original, and then in an update you would get the fixed version. If you don't update, then you're still going to have the old version, right? But yeah, anytime I see mistakes, and again, so this artwork, and we've been collecting artwork since, 1990, and not all of it is stuff that we've created ourselves. I've licensed artwork from other places as well. And so sometimes there's stuff in there that, needs fixed. And if you ever find something that needs fixed, let me know, because we'll fix it for free and send it to you. That's not on you, that's on us. If our stuff isn't the way that it should be, that's our problem, not yours. And so we'll fix it for you. If you were like, well, I like this, but I want it this big and I want it to look like this, that's you, that's not me, right? But if my file is not good, yeah, definitely let me know, and we'll fix it.
Images into Gerber, which is kind of how I have to function right now, so we don't know well enough. A lot of things are doubled, so we're not clear.
Yeah.
But I don't know if like everything.
Yeah, and I've also, with Gerber though, I've also found sometimes going back and forth with Gerber, something gets duplicated anyway. And I think that might be a filter issue, like the import filter. So we'd probably just look into that too. So CorelDRAW does not directly cut to any cutters, really. Some cutters have printer drivers. The Allen Datagraph cutter is the one that's got the most direct route, and that's why up here there's a button called Direct Cut. So if I clicked on that and I had an Allen Datagraph, it would send this to Allen's Direct Cut tool. We sell Allen Datagraph and Advanced Plotting Devices plotters. The Advanced Plotting Devices ones just go off of a PLT file. So if I was sending this to my flatbed, I would just go to File and hit Export, and then I would choose PLT, which is the file format that the plotter reads, and save it as a PLT file. If I'm using the Allen Datagraph, I'll just click that button. If I'm going to a Gerber GS750, really Gerber is the best thing for running that cutter. So I use this AI export button for that. I'll just click on that button and it'll send out an AI file of this, which then imports into Gerber just fine, usually. And so depending on what your hardware is, there's different ways of sending it to the cutter itself. But that's where we're at, is we've got a file there that's producible. So congratulations, everybody. Did it. Okay, so we got a little bit of time before noon. Do you have any questions on anything that we've covered? And most of the things I think we covered as we went, but do you have anything specific to what we've already done so far, question-wise?
Talking about the plot page.
Yes.
We have a Allen device.
Yeah.
How can I put the 0.00 in this corner?
Okay.
This part, because we try to plot from, but we can't.
Well, with an Allen Datagraph, the export, the way that it should work, and I don't have their software installed on here, but the way that it should work is it goes basically based off of one of the corners, and in the Allen Datagraph software itself, you can choose where that origin is. So we might just look at your software, the Allen Datagraph cutter portion of it, to see if we need to switch the settings there. You can choose where your 00 is though if you need to. So 0 right here on the thing is bottom left. That's one thing that the plot page does also, in addition to taking out all those colors, is it will resize my page to the size of my objects, which if I look at my page now, you'll see that my page is there. And it just puts this down, because it's the same size as the object, my 0, 0 is now here. The reason that we did that is because when we started selling the flatbed cutters, the flatbeds work off of this bottom left-hand corner as the starting position. And so we just had it resize the page to fit. And so it always started there. But if you need to move it, all you do is you take your upper left-hand corner here, and you click on that and drag to where you want your 0, 0 to be. And now 0, 0 is right there. Okay? Whether or not that's actually going to make a difference, I don't know. But that's how you change your location for your 0, 0.
I do mine in the table. I have to go to table, show borders.
Yeah, so you can do, so when Viet comes out to set up the flatbeds, he will add a custom page size. Okay, and then he will size it to 60 by 30 or whatever size cutter you have. So let's say it was 60 by 30. And the reason he does that is so that you've got a 60 by 30 frame that you can take this and put it here or rotate it, fit it on that table where you want it to be, especially if you're cutting more than one thing at a time. Then it makes sense to do a whole 60 by 30 window because that's how big you can cut in one swipe. If you're just cutting one piece, it's automatically going to resize your thing, so you don't have to mess with it if you don't want to.
Okay.
But yeah, totally up to you.
You like your flatbed?
Yeah, so Brooksy, he's funny. He's got 2 Allen datagraphs at least. I don't know, maybe more than that.
That's one word.
Odd.
Backups.
So I've sold him a Allen datagraph, and now I've sold him a flatbed. And so he's a good one if you want a cutter to talk to about which one you like better. Or
No,
pros
I
and
like
cons or whatever.
Yeah, there's pros and cons. You need room. It's a little noisy.
Yeah.
But didn't have a problem getting stencil.
We won't talk
What
about
do you
that.
have?
That's
Send to
too
me.
soon. Too soon.
Just whatever they had, I could take.
Did you have a 750 before?
He had a 536 Allen datagraph.
Yeah.
Which is kind of the same problem though. I mean, so the 750 is a little bit bigger problem because it's a different punch than everything else. But still, it's punched stencil. So yeah.
Why doesn't it matter what kind of stencil you use on there?
It doesn't require holes punched.
It just suctions it down to the table.
Oh,
Yeah.
because you don't know. Okay, because I don't know if you guys tried hard coat, but oh my gosh, it's not even usable.
Oh, yeah, we tried that.
Yeah,
It's
we tried
horrible.
it.
So, but that wouldn't be any different because
No
it still
problem.
won't peel. Like when you're picking the stencil, it still doesn't peel.
No, you don't have a problem.
Ooh, really? Wow.
I don't know.
We can do that hard coat.
Oh, hard coat was awful. It
Wouldn't
was
cut
like, it just stretched like you were,
Yeah, we got it.
really.
Yeah.
You saying the stencil itself stretches?
So, yeah, when you go to pick
Did you
it,
cut through? You might have cut too deep.
I tried all different types with that.
So there was a
changed
lot
my
of playing with settings
Yeah.
and depth.
Because when we go to pick it, it would just pull, so then I'd be sitting there with the razor just trying to.
So you just cut deep enough?
I don't know.
It was like I couldn't go deep enough to cut through this stuff. I don't
But it's
know.
thick.
Did Benny switch to U-Glass?
I
We've
got
been U-Glass
I got
for
U-Glass.
8 years.
Oh, you have?
Yeah. I buy by the pallets on the ran.
Are you rubbing it in, Mike?
That was the stuff you
It's,
can't
you know,
picture.
when we have money, I
Because
say,
of my
oh,
luck.
buy stencil, honey. Don't buy a ring.
Love you so much.
That's a
I know
keeper
what it
right
is.
there.
We know who to visit now if that happens again.
Yeah.
Well, I'll Google over your stencil. Actually, I said, shut up, everybody was on the phone. Nobody's trying to get into our place.
Any other questions?
Sorry.
No, Tammy, you're good. Squirrels are good. It's the end of the
We didn't
session.
order paper towels, we ordered stencils.
I do have a question, but it's not exactly on your list. Jenny from Darwin and Wendy have asked me if anybody could help with this. Because I learned old school, right? I learned with space right letters and I learned the old way. But she did ask, what are the 10 top fonts? So I don't know if anybody here would be interested in just, scribbling out a few that they use. she'd like to have a favorites that are just kind of like the go-tos.
So, okay, so as far as fonts go, let's talk a little bit about that, because you can use any font, again, that's in Windows, right? And I should have pointed this out.
We just didn't want to give our customers.
No, that's great, which is, again,
Stuff on the back end, like if you're trying to
If
do
you need to
updates and
add
stuff,
lettering.
yeah, if you have to add
It is,
lettering,
but if
it's
she's
just
showing customers, she doesn't want to show 1,000 fonts.
Right.
She's just looking for something to play
Right.
with for
Yeah.
new.
Fonts that require.
So- fonts that require very little kerning and are very well drawn are monument lettering center fonts. Okay, the MLC ones. And the reason that I push them so much is because Brandon Ballester, the one that creates these fonts, he's just, typographically, he's a geek, right? So that's what he does. And so I've actually pushed his fonts more than my own because I'm not really a font guy. I don't like doing fonts. It's just not my cup of tea. So I've pushed his MLC fonts as much as I possibly can. If you don't own the MLC fonts and you want to buy them, get them. They're great.
And we have them. We were just curious, like, kind of. We wanted to just give them like 5.
Yeah, so just.
If they give them 10, like if they don't like the 5, but still.
And that's perfectly fine. What I would do in your case is I would create a font filter. Okay, so even though you've got a whole bunch of fonts on your machine, in your font, we're going to do it one of two ways. Okay. I'll show you the way that I do it. Is there's a program that comes with CorelDRAW Graphics Suite that's called Corel Font Navigator. So if you go to your all applications in Windows under CorelDRAW Graphics Suite, whatever version you're using, you hit Corel Font Manager here, and that will pull up their font manager.
Just a minute. That's what she was.
So Corel Font Manager will let you, here's where you do the favorites. If you want to do favorites, you just basically you take your list here and you drag and drop over into favorites. Okay, so whatever you want as your favorite, you just drag and drop.
Okay. That's good. I didn't
Okay,
know
so that's easy. If you want to keep it under favorites, your 5, you just want to keep them under favorites, then just pick your font that you want. There's also a search. So if you're searching for MLC, you can hit MLC. It's going to only show your MLC ones. And then let's say you want Common Gothic is one of those. You just drag and drop to favorites. It'll be there. Now when you click favorites, it's going to show up under that list. Okay, this is our list of favorites here. I don't really want those, so I'm going to remove from favorites. Remove from favorites. Okay. So if you want to just use favorites, that's great. That's a good way to do it. If you want to have a folder of the fonts that you use, you can do that as well. You just hit Add Folder, and then it's going to go to Windows File Explorer where you can choose where you want your files to be saved. And that's what I do, is I just have all the fonts that I use in a folder. And I have a designer in Illinois, and so between the two of us, we use Microsoft OneDrive to share files. And so all of the files that we share are saved here under OneDrive. So if I go to my fonts folder, anything I put in here, he's going to have access to. Okay?
Checks to deposit.
Yeah, even that, yeah. No. Any fonts I throw in here, he's going to have access to. So I like to do it that way because it's easy for him or I to just throw fonts in. If you notice here, he's got fonts from clients. So sometimes when we're working on stuff, we'll need to do fonts that are specific to those clients, and so he can throw them in and I'll have access to them. That sort of stuff.
Do you guys have stuff that's similar to AICA?
So there's only one that MLC recently did that's an AICA equivalent, and that's Albreco. I think Albreco is one that AICA has. But no. Yes. At least I hope so. I told it to. Yeah, no, back to slow. If you go to Start, All Apps, scroll down to CorelDRAW Graphics Suite, whatever version you're using, and then click the Corel Font Manager. once you've got Corel Font Manager open, over in the left-hand side, there's folders and collections. There's a favorites already exists. So under My Fonts, that's going to be all the fonts that are installed on your machine. Okay. So you can get to any one that you got there and then just drag and drop to favorites. So like MD Roman is one that I use by default, right? So if I drag that one to favorites, it's going to show up there.
And then you just click on the filter thing.
And then you filter when you're back in, when you're back in Corel Draw and you're in your font list, there's this filter button, and all I have to do is check favorites, and it's only going to show me what's in the favorites. Okay? By doing it that way, by filtering, you limit what people can choose, but you also make it so that if they need to, they can uncheck that and go get something else that they really need. Yes, exactly. But by having either favorites or I like to just keep mine in this art fonts folder, that we save. If I click on that, it's going to give me everything that's in that folder. So we've got, 293 fonts that we
you could have one
use.
favorites, and you could have a folder with additional fonts.
Yeah, you can have you can have as
Just
many.
start with
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Thank you.
Yep. So great way of doing that. There are also other filters here too, but most of the time these don't really apply to what we're doing. So and you can hide your filter list once you've done it so that it doesn't show up. The top ones.
Can you have your favorites be your default? Or do you have
So-
to put that every time?
A default font. To set your default font,
Not that, but just that when you click your choices, can you
the
make your favorites pop up only, like always, or you always have to go and search, filter?
it's my understanding that if you don't have it filtered, they're not going to show up. You either have to filter it or you have to make it that those are the last fonts that you used, and they'll show up on the top of the list because this is your last fonts used. Right now it's showing my last 5 fonts used, but you can change that to 20 and then it'll show you your last 20 fonts or whatever. But yeah. So,
I have a question, and I'm going to ask it, but you may be addressing it later.
Yep.
So when we go to put in a font,
yes.
and you've got the automatic little sizes there, 0.33, 0.666, whatever, can we change those sizes to ones we use?
This drop down here,
Yeah.
you can type in your own number. So let's say you can type in 3, but it's not going to add it to the list.
Okay, that's what I wanted to know. Okay, thank you.
Unfortunately, this list here is it's a conversion from point sizes,
Okay,
and so that's why the odd numbers.
that's okay. That's what I'd ask.
We do have this monument text Docker over here that it is our plan to make it so that this drop down is
More like 0.75,
more like what you want. Exactly. And actually, the way that it currently works is you can type in 0.875 and hit enter, and it'll save it to the list. So it's going to be in that list now.
With this tool, you can change one by one. But what about if I want to change the first and the third? Because when I try to pick up these two and change the
So
size,
using monument text, for now, you can only do it on one line at a time. Again, we haven't developed this very fully, and that's why it's really only got those 2 tools there, or that's really what it's for. But that will change in the future as we develop it more. Our UK guys actually have a different tool that they've developed because they do primarily text, and so we're going to inherit that, and so it'll be a lot more fluid that way. But we're not quite there yet. We'll get there though.
But you could change first, third, and fourth on that top one, right? If you selected each one of them, then
this you can
Yeah.
certainly change up here. Yeah, you can do
and then
1.5 and it'll change all of them at the same time. Yes. This over here, the monument text Docker, what this is meant for is if you use a font, any old font that comes out of Windows or wherever you get that font from, the way that Corel Draw sees the size of this font is based off of on the back end of the font using ascenders and descenders. So if you have like a A with an accent and a lowercase g, it's looking at the size of that box really, as opposed to the size of a capital letter. And so with the MLC fonts and our MD fonts, we've built those specifically to work the way that we work with monuments, that you type in 1.25 inches, it's going to be 1.25 inches. If I do this in Autumn, where who knows where that came from, at inch, it's really physically only 0.72 inches. Okay? And so that's where the text Docker comes into play, is I can say, well, I want this to be 1.25 inches, and hit apply, and it'll do the math for me. So it's really saying in my drop down it's 1.73, but it's physically 1.25.
You can change it over here though too, right?
So if
Unlock that.
you change it over here to 1.25, this is a physical height. So if you have like a letter S or a letter O, or it depends on the font, but so this one doesn't work, but let's say we switch to monotype cursive or something that's got these swashes, right? Then if I do 1.25, that's not really accurate, because that's again the size of, that's not from baseline to top of the text.
So you can go on the Docker and do it.
With the Docker, you can choose a reference letter. So the H is not a good one, because if we type in a letter H for this particular font, you'll see how there's a swash that comes up above the line. So H isn't good, but E, I, whatever, you choose your reference letter here, and then you hit apply, and it'll resize it. Yeah.
All right.
We should probably tell them about that.
Since you mentioned Brandon, I don't know, Illustrator, I don't know if everybody knows one of his services is about, like if you get an end date and you can't match it, you can't find it. He's such a genius, I can't even say enough about it. I sent him some of the wonkiest fonts and pictures and rubbings, and for $50 he sends me back a cut file ready to go.
Yeah.
It is absolutely the best time saver, best money I've spent, besides Cameron. I can't say enough about his, I really can't.
No, he's great.
He does
Absolutely.
the craziest fonts, and he's just a genius.
Yeah, so some people do ask if Monument Lettering Center is us as well. It's not. It's a completely different company. But I think, again, back in 2018 was when we got to know each other. And so I've been selling his fonts since then. And I just push him as much as I can. He's up to 55 currently released now. Different font, like typefaces, but there's really like 84, 85 different font files, because there's different sizes and outlines and inlines and those different things. So definitely good fonts. But the one difference between my MD font, well, there's multiple differences, but the major difference is with my MD Roman, for instance, I've made the uppercase and the lowercase the exact same, because there wasn't a lowercase specific version. In MLC fonts, and you won't notice a difference because we typed in all caps, but let's switch this to heavy bar, for instance. If I were to type in not all caps, the lowercase version is a smaller version than the uppercase. And so that is the difference between the way that we build our fonts. But yeah, it's if you do type in lowercase with those two, you can just hit this toggle and it'll jump between all caps and small
What did
caps.
you toggle?
This all caps button, the AB button.
Okay.
So, all right. Well, I think that gets us to lunch. I figured it's a good time to get a break and let your brain rest and your butt rest. And so if you want to go places in town, I'm going to give you an hour and a half. So we'll come back here at 1:30. Around here there is McDonald's and Taco John's and Burger King, and there's a Subway. So there's a bunch of stuff right in here if you want, or you can go a little further into town for lunch.
Are they locking this room up? Like,
I'm gonna stay here.